Welcome back to the expansion of consciousness. I'm your host, Jason Medlock. We have an exciting show today. Mrs. Jennifer Moore will be with us, empathic abilities. She's a highly sensitive, intuitive. So we're going to talk about an entire realm of things that'll be very, very, very fun and very, very exciting for the audience, for you. But I just want to make sure that we are locked in and we're loaded. A metaphysical channel, a channel for understanding how to gain knowledge to increase your mindset, to increase mindset performance, to change emotions, to remove depression, to expand and understand your dreams, astro travel, a law of attraction, manifestation, you name it. We talk about it. And in some cases, if I don't practice the modality, some of my most trusted guests, like Jennifer does. But Jennifer is a former emotional hot mess and a world-class awfulizer. Jennifer Moore supports other highly sensitive, intuitive women to release empathic, overwhelm, and distress so that they can access their inner wisdom and power. Jen brings over 30 years of experience to her work where she merges practically practicality, intuitiveness, and skills to offer insight, guidance, and emotional freedom to those she serves. Jennifer holds a master's degree in psychology and religion, is an accredited master's trainer for EFT, emotional tapping. We all know what that is. EFT International, founder of the Empathic Mastery Academy, author of Amazon bestseller, Empathic Mastery, host of the Empathic Mastery Show, and is the creator of 2 Oracle decks and the Photographic Healing Tarot. Now, Jennifer has her own show where she has a lot of guests. And for her to find time to even come on my show, I'm overwhelmed and I'm excited she's here. But to learn more about Jen and her work, visit her at empathicmastery.com. And for those who watch the show, I always give the guests plenty love, and I put their stuff up and they're able to really meticulously go through it. But without any further ado, I want to bring this beautiful, shining spirit to the audience right now. Hello, Jennifer. How are
Hey
you?
there, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. I am just delighted to be here tonight.
Okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
hop right into it. And we're glad you're here. The question one of my clients said to me, "I love it when you said, tell us about how you started." She said, "I love
Mhm.
it when you do that." So when I so what I'm gonna do is, obviously you are everything. Your mediumship. You've experienced you are an empath.
Yep.
You have these intuitive abilities.
Yep.
So now here comes that most that famous question I asked. Tell us how you
How
started.
did you start? How did you get there? I also I was thinking as we just before we got started, I was thinking, what an auspicious, amazingly auspicious day for you and I to be doing this interview,
Oh, really? Okay.
Because so yesterday we had a solar eclipse, and today is the new moon. It was this morning, new moon in Aries. Now the moon is in Taurus, but this is a time for being able to go really deep and really get down to the core of what's going on. And it's some people have been saying that like today is the day, yesterday and today are the days where we want to form our intentions for the inner work that will ripple out for the next 6 months or longer. So I'm just thrilled to be here on this amazing day because there is just like, so I don't know if you can feel the energy in the air, but there's
I
just so much
do.
energy. Yeah. And it is such, used in the right way, we can do a lot of amazing things with this particular time. But to go back to how did you get here? How did you start? I was born highly sensitive and empathic. I was a really creative, really imaginative little chatterbox. I was constantly talking and exploring things and just really I loved the idea of like flower fairies and mermaids and magic even as a really tiny kid. And I was also raised in a family that was in the Northeast and pretty agnostic, where they had
Hmm.
left the church, they had stepped away from sort of the more traditional, like, and more sort of traditional spiritual practices, and they went more towards like science and reason. So I was this magical little child in this family where there wasn't a whole lot of room for psychic ability, and there wasn't a whole lot of room for like, ghosts and spirits and other things like that. So a lot of my childhood, I was being told that I was too sensitive, that I was overreacting, that I was taking things too personally, that I had an overactive imagination, that none of the stuff that I believed in or that I thought was part of stuff was real. And so I early on, I was really torn between what I knew, like the felt sense, the gnosis within me about what I experienced of the world, and what I was being told was the party line. And so by the time I was in my even like my early teens, I was really confused and feeling like I was really attracted to and really, really drawn to all of the paranormal. I mean, back when I was that age, we had like one shelf in the library on the paranormal and the occult. And I was just constantly like reading all the books and looking for all the information. But at the same time, I was really up against a lot of people who were naysayers and who were skeptics and who just didn't believe in any of this. So I was constantly kind of struggling with this idea of like, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I need to figure out, like, I need to fix myself. And as somebody, I'll sort of roll back and just say, for me, because the word empath has become so common in our culture, like people are
Trendy.
trendy. Yeah, it's like my friend Michelle says, I think she was the one who started this empath is the new black. I don't know if she said it or I said it, but one of us, but that idea of empath is the new black, like it has become the trendy thing. And
Right.
what I think that also means is that, but we also don't really have any common definitions. Interestingly, the word originated from science fiction. It's not a clinical term. It's not something that psychologists necessarily use, although more and more the healing world is starting to incorporate the word. But it originally came out of science fiction. And I think many of us first really experienced the concept of an empath with Star Trek Next Generation with Deanna Troi, where you were seeing this person who had the ability, Betazoid, who had the ability to pick up all of the information, and especially the hidden information that was going on with the people who had come onto the Starship Enterprise. And so as that kind of sort of spread out into our culture, I think more and more people started recognizing their own tendencies to pick things up. And my personal definition of what an empath is, an empath is a being, could be a human, could be an animal, who is picking up the thoughts, the feelings, the energy, and the sensations from the world around them. But unlike somebody who is a psychic, an intuitive, or a medium who understands they're picking up paranormal information, they have extrasensory perception, and information is coming to them, the thing that makes an empath different, and this is what makes it so challenging to be an empath, is that empaths process all the information that is coming in as if it's their own. And here's an example. If an empath, so if a psychic person walked into a room where maybe there had been a death had just happened, or maybe somebody had experienced like a conflict or a fight, the psychic is going to be like, wow, I can feel so much sadness here. Or, oh, I sense a spirit in this room. Or, wow, I can really feel a lot of conflict in the air here. The empath walks into that room and suddenly is like, why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so weird and like confused, like as if I'm dead now? Why do I suddenly feel so much anger or conflict? And the thing about this is that means by its nature, we tend to own things that are not ours. Now, one question that a lot of people will ask, so I'm going to jump to the chase and just answer it before you even ask it, is can somebody be an empath, an intuitive, and a psychic? And the answer is Absolutely, yes. As a matter of fact, most people who are empaths are also very intuitive and very psychic. The challenge, though, is that when we are not able to recognize what's ours and what's not ours, and when we are picking up all the thoughts, feelings, energy, and sensations coming from the world around us, what happens is our capacity for discernment and that sort of knowledge that we get with intuition gets sort of like drowned out by the volume of the empathic distress. So, how's that for getting us started?
That got us started. And
Yeah.
but what's really interesting to me is, why are emotions, that's what empaths feel. They can feel emotions from the room.
Yes.
I had a comedian who came on the show in season one, and she is an empath, and she was having a hard time doing stand-up comedy because of the feelings that she felt in the room. She knew that there was someone in pain, and she just had a hard time. So obviously emotions play a big part, but
Yes.
in some ways it's crucial
Hmm.
to empaths. Why is that?
So, I was recording a TikTok earlier today where I was talking about our culture around emotions and the fact that I think that one of the things that happens for a lot of empaths is that, I mean, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think that we as a culture, we kind of lack an emotional intelligence. Like we don't necessarily, a lot of us were never taught how to feel our feelings, how to deal with our feelings. And
We were
so,
taught how to suppress them.
yeah, we were taught how to suppress them. We were taught how to kick that can down the road and just, move along. Nothing to see here, folks. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And, I mean, parents were taught that if they were having a hard time, that they needed to like suppress those feelings and just kind of keep things looking like everything was fine on the surface so as to not scare the child or something. But the thing is, kids know something's going on. We feel stuff going on underneath the surface. And so, what I think happens is that empaths are people who are more sensitive to the unspoken, subtle emotions that are flying around the room. And what I believe is that when other people do not feel their feelings, the resistance to feeling those feelings is actually, ironically, a lot more stressful than the feeling. If somebody is just in a room and they're moving through grief or they're moving through fear and they're just really owning their feelings, as an empath, there isn't necessarily the same feeling of like absorbing it. Like it doesn't, it's almost like you don't necessarily pick it up in the same way. But when things are covert, when things are hidden, when somebody is denying what's going on, that's so frequently when the empath is going to sense it and be like, what's going on here? I sense something. Nobody's talking about it. Nothing. Like there's a certain kind of like, I know something's here, but nobody's owning it. Nobody's taking responsibility for it. And as a result, the empath will then start trying to process that. I think that, I was sort of doing some work, kind of light working with another light worker and just looking backwards. And I could really see how this sort of the designated role of the emoter in a family goes back for generations, certainly did in my family, where there's sort of the person who's kind of the emotional heavy lifter, the one who's going to be doing the emotional processing. And so I think that a big part of why empaths are so prone to picking up emotions is because a lot of people keep putting them down. If people would hold on to them and own them for themselves, I'm not sure that empaths would necessarily be quite like would be absorbing quite so much. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And there are people that are watching this show that have watched it for, for some time now, that are empathic.
Yeah.
There's a Reiki master, a good friend of mine. She's empathic. My sister's an empath.
Hmm.
And I guess when I posed the question to you a minute ago, about, the emotions that empathic people feel, and, sometimes, just like the comedian, it's interfering with her job. It's
Yes.
interfering with her being able to, function as a comedian. So these emotions for empathic people, they can be problems.
They can.
So they can be. So should they learn, or is there a way to learn how to control their sensitivities? And is it necessary for them to do it, or should they feel? Because you know this, Jennifer, when we feel, our psychic abilities are on 100. They're on 10, as a young adult, or young millennials like to call it, on 10. But when we are able to feel and allow ourselves to feel, then we're able to discern between the conscious and the subconscious mind. I'm able to do a remote viewing project. I'm able to use quantum healing hypnosis on the client because I can feel. I'm able to now scientific remote view and use taste, touch, smell, temperature. Those are the ingredients we use to locate remote objects. And I exercise. I'm not a psychic. I exercise my psychic abilities.
Yes.
Our point is, because I'm totally in sync with my emotions.
Well, what comes to my mind as you're speaking is that this a lot of the time has to do with whether we are reacting or responding, and whether we are like, where in sort of the brainwave category are we? Because it's like we've got the gamma waves, which are we're like deep in concentration and incredibly hyper focused in doing something. Then we've got the beta waves, which is kind of the way a lot of people function all the time, where they're worried and they're perseverating. And it's kind of like they're in their ego, they're in their story. And instead of being present with the emotion and letting it flow, a lot of times there's a lot of drama and a lot of engaging with the emotion. Whereas when we are in that state of grace, as it were, that allows us to do remote viewing, that allows us to discern and come to that sort of knowledge, like
Understanding that,
clairsentience or claircognizance,
clairsentient, clairaudience,
claircognizance, where we just
cognizance,
know things. We just know things.
clairvoyance,
Clairvoyance, but that's more in the brain waves of the alpha waves, and then the theta waves, which are a lot.
I was waiting on you to say theta. Yep. That's what we work in as hypnotists.
And working in theta. I mean, some of my very first trainings were with the Silva method and learning how to get into the alpha state. Yep.
I was wondering, and I already know you coming back on my show because Jose Silva is brilliant.
Oh my God. I mean, I learned so much. And like, even over the course of like the weekend long training I did, I mean, that's where I first discovered about remote viewing. That's where I discovered all kinds of incredible things. And I was almost too young to appreciate how much I was learning at the time, but I assimilated it. I learned it, and it was life-changing. I mean, I would highly recommend to anybody who wants a really grounded system in intuitive and psychic development and brain development, take this, study the Silva method. It is truly spectacular.
The Jose Silva method, the programming that he does with the subconscious mind, and it works. I've done it. I've used it on clients. I also use Dr. Jill Ormond, the brainwave, a lot of the brain frequency work that she's done, groundbreaking research that she did. Some of it at at Bob Monroe's retreat, the remote viewing retreat that's in Virginia. But brainwave therapy, absolutely, anything that can alter the frequencies and move them into a high vibration. I'm on board with you, Jennifer, when you start talking about that. But I have another question for you.
Okay.
So obviously you're empathic and you were in this whirlpool of minutia.
Yes.
How'd you pull yourself out of that? And what did it really take to get you where you are today? Now, we talked about how'd you get here today, but we didn't talk about how you pull yourself out of the quote unquote, what you said at the beginning, that is, in the beginning of your bio, but how'd you get out of this empathic whirlpool?
How did I get out of the empathic whirlpool?
Yes.
So for me, I'm sure you've heard the saying, I guess, when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I mean,
that's when they call you to be, that's when you get the phone call to be a coach, because people get sick and tired and they call you, Jennifer. Hey, I'm ready.
I'm ready. I tried the self-medicating route. Sugar was one of my drugs of choices. Thankfully, alcohol and drugs, not as much. I experimented, but it just didn't really grab me because they made me more anxious. But, I like sugar, cigarettes, trying to find, relationships, shopping, trying to find some way to get around it. And the thing was, none of these were working. And so basically, realizing that all of the self-medicating attempts were not working and putting them down led me to realize I had to do some emotional work. And so I actually ended up in my mid 20s finding a therapist who happened to be a Silva method trained person,
Wow.
interestingly,
Wow.
and was really, really intuitive and really psychic. And she started working with me. And what she started helping me to discover was how often I was coming to sitting in the chair talking to her and realizing that what I was upset about had started after a conversation with somebody else, or it started after being at an event with a whole bunch of people, or it started after I had been riding on the subway or something. And what she helped me to start realizing was that so often, probably like 80% of the time, I was either feeling not only my own feelings, but feeling other people's feelings as well, or really feeling mostly somebody else's stuff. And that was like life changing for me, because that's when I started realizing, like, oh, this isn't mine. And I think that for empaths, just that ability to say, this isn't mine, is one of the most powerful, powerful things we can possibly do. Because so often, I mean, I don't know, I mean, so obviously, a lot of empaths. I
Yes.
can count on one hand, I could actually count on two fingers in all of the empaths. As you were mentioning, I have a podcast as well, the Empathic Mastery Show.
Yes, we're gonna
I've
we're gonna
interviewed,
get to that
yeah,
one, and
I've
you
interviewed,
you have great content on there too. And
thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't put my name in the hat to be on there. Okay.
Oh, I was thinking that. I was absolutely, Jason. I'm way ahead of you, honey. I was thinking about that for next season. And so, but one of the things I will say is that I have spoken to so many other empaths, both through the podcast and through the coaching work that I do, or I don't actually use the word coaching, I use the word mentoring, but through the work that I do with people, both in groups and one on one. I can count two people in the entire time out of the hundreds, if not thousands, of empaths I've spoken to who were not told that they were too sensitive, that they were overreacting, and they were taking things too personally as little children. And what I have noticed happens as a result of this message is that we very, very frequently are up against people who don't want to own their feelings, going back to that thing of like the lack of, so the people trying to learning, trying to suppress their emotions, and empathic, and us as empaths, like picking up on and absorbing those feelings and trying to process those feelings and make sense of those feelings, but being gaslit at the same time. And one thing I've been realizing lately that has just like light dawned on Marblehead the other day, because I was like, I've noticed also that a lot of empaths have a tendency to really doubt themselves, to really like question themselves, and sort of in the way that sometimes somebody who's just psychic or intuitive may not be so full of self-doubt. But what I've noticed is that when somebody's an empath and they've been gaslit so much, being told, no, that's not really happening, I'm not really feeling that way, that's not really going on, you're just making too big a deal out of it, that what that does is we're getting accurate information, we're picking things up. And instead of being validated and confirmed the way a good, like, if, I mean, you and I both learned to develop our psychic ability by
Yes.
practicing. I imagine, since you have a history with Jose Silva, practicing and getting feedback from somebody about what was accurate, and learning, like, yes, that's accurate. Yes, that's accurate. Yes, that's accurate. But for a lot of empaths, the problem is the experience was, instead of getting feedback of, yes, you're right, I don't want to deal with these feelings, but you're right, I am feeling these things. Instead, what happens for so many empaths is that they experience um, things that are real, and then they're invalidated for it, which means that that sort of unravels or causes them to question everything that they're picking up on because of that lack of validation that usually starts so early.
So you mentioned that, one of the first things to pull yourself out of the whirlpool was to just recognize this
Recognize
does not belong to me.
this does not belong to me. This
So
does
then,
not belong to me.
so
I
then
love
what?
I love the so I really love the Polish proverb, not my circus, not my monkeys. Like, I live by that one. Another one that I absolutely live by that goes is sort of the next step is your poor planning does not constitute my emergency. But before we go there, the empathic mastery system is that I created is a 5-step system to go from emotional hot mess like I was to thriving success. And I don't know, like, I think if I was writing the book right now, I probably would change it from thriving success to maybe to ease, joy, ease, grace, and flow.
So so
Yeah,
I want to interrupt because
yeah.
I want to bring in an expert on empathic abilities, and I want you to just give me an understanding of what you think about their work and what they've been doing. That's the expert right there. It's you. I know you're like, wait a minute, you
Wait a
bringing on an
second.
expert, and I am an expert. But let's
I mean,
talk
I was like,
about.
oh, that's interesting. This
I
will be
know, but
fascinating.
let's
Yeah.
talk about this. The beautiful tools that you have to help people. How can people work with you? What can they expect when they get to the website? Let's talk about it a little bit.
Well, hopefully, what they can expect when they get to the website is that the links will work. um, I really feel what I've created is a sort of a tiered system where if you want to start, you're just noticing or you're thinking, maybe I am an empath and I really don't know how to control this. I start with the basic stuff of check out my book, Empathic Mastery. And then, I also have a free Facebook group where I teach free master classes every single month at the full moon, where I talk about topics and I share things with people and and I help people to work through things. Because one of the things I feel very, very strongly about as an empath is that not all mentors are created equal. Just because I'm an expert in something does not mean I'm the right person for you. So I
Right.
feel very strongly that people should really get a feel. Like, I want people to get a feel for me. So sort of the first tier is like either very low cost or free content with the Facebook group and the podcast and everything. And just like, listen to me. Do I feel like somebody who could help you? Do I sound like somebody that you actually think like is genuine and authentic and real? Or do you think that I'm full of it? Like, what feels right to you? And then from there, basically, I offer support to people in a couple different ways. I offer support to people in the form of private one-on-one, like VIP support and mentoring, where we do a bunch of energy work and mindset work and a lot of EFT tapping and a lot of sort of, as well as some strategic examining and planning and things like that. But I also do group work with people where through the Empathic Mastery Academy, we run through the 5 steps of empathic mastery. Or also, if somebody wants to learn how to be an impeccable EFT practitioner, right now, I'm leading a training once a year, which interestingly is literally, you're right there, is starting on this Saturday.
All right.
Yeah. And amazing group of people who are joining us. I mean, if there's somebody who's listening to this and they happen to be like, oh my God, I have to do this, I actually have I have like space for like 2 more people in the training if they want to join us. But the EFT training is very much for me. This comes down to I have 3 pillars to the work. It's love, empathy, and safety,
Beautiful.
gentleness. Because and what I believe very strongly is that when we can learn how to hold the space for emotions for ourselves, then we can hold space for other people's emotions without feeling the urgent need to rush in to rescue. And so I am a strong believer in, I don't have like a, take my, take my program and follow these particular steps to find empathic, to like, this is what I'm going to say, what you should do. I'm a strong believer in, we meet ourselves where we are, we explore what is making us tick, and then we see where it takes us from there.
Let's look at the book trailer so people can,
Oh,
know
thank
what
you.
this
I'm
is
so
about.
proud of this book trailer.
Just beautiful.
Oh,
Um, uh,
thank you.
I know, just the book, Empathic Mastery. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look at, there it is right there, Empathic Mastery. And it's from Jennifer Moore, by Jennifer Moore, empathicmastery.com, EMPATHIC mastery.com. Miss Jennifer Moore. I have
Mm-hmm.
more questions for you, and I'm going to wear you out with everything I want to know that I know the audience wants to know.
Oh, bring it, Jason. I love questions. I love questions. I love asking questions and I love answering questions. Questions make the world go round.
Okay, so you've had prophetic dreams,
Yep.
all your life, and it started, I think, you're around 9 years old.
Yes.
And can you talk to us about what happened? And at that age, and my ventures and my understanding of what's going on here started when I was 9 years old. So
Wow.
that age of 9 years old is really interesting because we know between 0 and 7, the subconscious mind basically protects us and is absorbing everything. And around from 8 years old on, the conscious mind is now born.
Yeah.
So you were having these prophetic dreams at 9 years old. What happened?
So I
How
had
did you
so
know
I
the
had
secrets?
one really specific prophetic dream at the age of 9, and that was, and what I find fascinating about it is that it really is like I dreamed it like an empath, not like a psychic. Because basically I had a best friend who I had known when I was like, I met her when I was 3, and then she and her family moved out of state when I was 6. And so I hadn't seen her for about 3 years, and we're talking like the 60s go and early 70s here. And so nobody was going to be picking, like no 3 or 4 year old is going to pick, or like 6 year old is going to pick up the phone and call a friend. And we were too young to be pen pals. So I'd really lost touch with her. And then all of a sudden I had this vivid dream one morning where I vividly dreamed my mom died. And I had the worst day of my 9 year old life. I mean, I was heartbroken. I was bereft. I was just like, just going. It was like I was just like a zombie going through the motions. And then at dinner that night, my mom said, "So and so's mom died of breast cancer last night." And somehow, even at 9, I was like this, A, B, boom, there it is. And I knew my dream was about that. I knew that I was dreaming about my mom because my friend's mother died. Now, what I see, what I've come to understand as I've been having many conversations with a lot of different people, as on a number of different podcasts and stuff, is that where I had originally thought this was just like standard extrasensory perception, what I've come to understand is that my processing it as if it was my own mom is an empath thing. Whereas if I had just been getting psychic information, I probably would have had a vision, like clairvoyant vision, of my friend maybe at her mother's deathbed and seeing her grieving. But because of my empathic sensitivity, I felt her emotions coming to me and got the information about what was happening, but I processed it as if it was my own. And so that has been with prophetic dreams. That was often, especially for the first like 30, 35 years of my life, maybe even into my yeah, like especially like 30 to 35, just shy of 40. That was how, if I was getting a dream or having a dream, it would be like I'd process things as if it was my own. And I had numerous times where somebody in my circle of people was going to die or had just died. And depending on the gender of the person, it was either I dreamed my father would die or I would dream my mother would die. Fortunately, I started to, like, I figured this out, and I was like, because it was never about my parents dying. It was, my dad only just passed back in 2020, and my mom is actually still here, God bless her. But and so I kind of knew, like, it was like I had this weird kind of coding system for prophecy that meant that I had to kind of like translate. It was almost like, it was like taking like Spanish, translating it into French, and then translating it into English.
Well, we live many lives,
Yes.
and just studying under Dolores Cannon and Julia Cannon, dreams are real, and the subconscious mind places dreams in your mind for a reason, and they will not place anything for you to recall or dream about unless it's for the greater good of all in this particular lifetime. So I'd say to you that there was a passing of the parents, but it may not have been this lifetime. You viewed it in another lifetime. So I would want to add that. And I got one more question because we're running out of time, but I don't want, and you have to come back and I have to come
I
see
would
you too,
love
because
to. Yeah,
there are a number
you
of
and I have
things.
all kinds of things to talk about very clearly.
Exactly. And we
Yeah.
can't get to them because we have
Yeah.
to, the YouTube algorithm, we got to be under a certain amount of minutes so we can get the play for this particular episode.
Mhm.
But you talked about it so eloquently and we didn't dive into it, but we're about to. EFT. What is it? And why are you such a big fan? And why should the audience be too?
So EFT, really simply put, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And the simplest way to describe it is that it's kind of like a mental and emotional acupuncture without the needles.
Yes.
And what we can do, and what it does is it basically allows us to calm down a dysregulated nervous system and stop the fight or flight patterns that a lot of times have just been going on like constant tape loop within us, and just like having us in a state of constant reactivity. And by gently tapping on the side of our hand, top of our head, on places on our face and on our torso, what we can do is we can focus on where we might be having a pattern of distress. And by tapping, as we focus on these things and using very simple language, we can actually release the tension by moving, allowing the energy to flow through the meridians in our energy system in our body, like to loosen it up. I sort of think of it as almost like it's like an ultrasonic cleaner or something, where, because we often as human beings, when we get distressed, we contract and we congest and we carry these Dr. Bradley Nelson of the Emotion Code calls trapped emotions. And the thing is that when we lock in these trapped emotions, we block the energy in our system. We get ourselves into these tape loops, into these patterns, into these things. It can manifest as mental distress. It can manifest as emotional distress. It can manifest as physical pain. It can manifest as physical illness. It can manifest as cravings. It can manifest as behavioral stuff. And what happens is when we can get to the root of that congestion and tap on it and release it, miracles happen.
Yes.
And the reason I love this so much is that, this ain't my first rodeo. I started doing Silva method back in the 80s, and I trained in various modalities like Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. I'm a motion code practitioner. I've done a lot of training in shamanic healing and, tarot and psychic development and things like that. And in all of the years, with all of the modalities I've worked with, I have never found anything that is more effective, is more efficient, more elegant, and gentle than EFT. And what I love, love, love about EFT is that it allows us to address and clear really intense, really difficult past events and things that we think we may never be able to get over without ever having to go back into it. So where, so many other things may be like, we don't want to share the secret, or we don't want to share the details, or we don't want to have to relive the experience. EFT allows us to acknowledge what we're clearing without touching it from a distance, so that we can dissipate all of the charge that we're carrying on it without having to go back into it at all. And that is one of the things I love so much about it, because it means that we can gently clean the wound without feeling like having to rip off the scab.
Absolutely wonderful. I may have a secret or two. I need to call you up, Jennifer.
Okay.
You can clear me out. That's absolutely amazing. In EFT, there have been people on the show talking about EFT, but I can honestly say that was a very concise, clear understanding about emotional freedom tapping and what it actually does. And before I forget about this, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to connect with the audience by giving a few last parting words. But I know you have some amazing resources and tools for the audience, our listeners. How can people reach you and claim a gift that you may have out there? Now, I always tell the guests, I know you have some free to give, and then sometimes they'll say, "Well, I'm gonna put it up and I'll get it up there." But no, seriously, last words for this audience. And do you have any freebies so that they can
I have so many freebies. So, so I have a system. If you want to learn about the whole shooting match, just go on over to empathicmastery.com. If you want to learn about the book, go to empathicmasterybook.com. If you want to learn about the podcast, go to empathicmasteryshow.com. And I have, like I said, there's a free Facebook group where I do juicy 2-hour masterclasses every single month. The podcast has got a weekly show with interviews with empaths. If you want to get an ebook from me with some really good tools for okay, I'm an empath. How do I deal with this? What do I do about it? Then jump on over to empathicsensitivity.com. That's the name for the freebie. And that way people can, you can start getting a handle on this. You can start learning how to use the basics of tapping to start calming down your nervous system. You can start looking at the basics of what is mine? What is not mine? Why am I, how do I stop absorbing all the thoughts, feelings, energy, and sensations that are coming from the world around you? And if there was one thing that I wanted to sort of end with, or the one message that I want to offer is, if you are hearing me and you're identifying as an empath and you're oh, yep, I'm that person, I just want to say you are perfect exactly as you are. Your sensitivity is a gift for this world. And just because some people don't necessarily understand it or push against it because they don't want you to acknowledge what's going on, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. You are made this way for a reason, and you have a very important role for this earth, for this planet, and you have something that only you have that we need. So don't judge your rainbow, your empathic rainbow, by colorblind standards. We need you.
Beautiful. Jennifer Moore, thank you for coming on and sharing just beautiful ways to use modalities to improve, to help people overcome all types of, whether it's emotions, whether it's depression, because I know that EFT can help with all of that.
All of that cravings, food sensitive. I mean, food sensitivities, I could go fragrance sensitivities. I have yet to find something that EFT can't help
Wow.
in some
Wow.
way or another. It can't set a bone, but it can at least get you over the distress of the point where you slipped and fell and you broke the bone. Yeah.
Well, Jennifer Moore, don't you go anywhere. I'm gonna move you to the back office. I'm gonna wrap this show up. I want to talk to you for one hot second. We thank you for coming out.
Jason,
And
thank you so much for having me. It has truly been a pleasure. This was clearly a divine appointment.
yes, it was. And
Yeah.
I thank you. 1 second. Wow, Jennifer. She's amazing. The number of modalities that she's learned tapping, she's learned um, how to increase her intuitive ability. She is an empath. It's just being able to tap in, to be able to use her subconscious mind, to be able to use the intuitive abilities, her mediumship abilities, her psychic abilities. And that's when she doesn't like to say coach, but that's when mentors like Jennifer puts it all together for you. And that's what we do. There are coaches out there that coach straight from the conscious mind, business, and this is how you set your schedule up, and this is what you should do. Then there are spiritual driven coaches who work in the business realm, but they use modalities. They use different methods to actually not only help you succeed at what you want, but help you heal at the same time. That's what Jennifer does. That's what I do. That's what every coach that comes on the show, everyone has a method. Everyone has a different way. Every spiritual teacher that comes on, they have a different way. Every guest that I bring on that just wants to talk about a topic may not be a coach, but topic driven. And I'm sure when Jennifer comes back, we're going to get into some topics. We're going to talk about some things. To be able to have this type of platform to continue to share information. And none of it is proprietary information. None of it is in my secret coaching system. It's not a secret, but it is hidden esoteric knowledge that can be learned if you want it. I mean, from being a hot mess to a thriving intuitive, embracing your social sensitivity, understanding the 5 traits of an empathic entrepreneur. These are the things that Jennifer can help you with. I want to thank you for coming out and listening and pressing the like button and pressing the actual button to get on the show. It's a lot of buttons you can press, but you press the one to get on YouTube to watch the expansion of consciousness and the content that we're delivering. We want to thank you for being with us tonight. And our time is up. But at the end of the day, there are 3 things that I always say that I want you to really try to ingrain in your heart. The first thing you have to do in any modality, in working with anybody or trying to gain any type of understanding, is to relax. Then you must trust. Any healer, any uh, hypnotist, anybody who's working with you needs your trust so that you can relax. And the last thing is discover, because there's a ton of things out there that we have to discover and understand, that we are more than just avatars. You are more than just this flesh. You are sound and light. Good night.